And good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar titled 6 Need to Know Talent Management Trends for 2018. We're really glad that you've joined us today. My name is Ann Torrey, and I'm from BirdDogHR, and I will be your moderator for today's session. I would like to quickly cover some event housekeeping items at this time. You may have noticed that you entered the online session in an audio silent mode. Therefore, if you have questions throughout the presentation, please use the Q&A box to submit those, and I will ask those questions to our presenters at the end of the session. But you will have a chance to interact with our presenters with some poll questions, so please be ready for those. While we are waiting for a few others to join, I did want to take a few minutes just to tell you a little bit about BirdDogHR. So BirdDogHR has been in business now for 21 years and has been in hyper growth mode for about the past 5. We started with roots in recruiting software and job boards, but have evolved into a full talent management solution. Our presenters and I have been working with online HR solutions for over a decade, so we have quite a few stories to share about talent management trends, where they've been, and where they're going. So as the economy continues to grow, employee engagement is very competitive right now as companies scramble to train and retain top talent. So on the next slide that Chris will show you, BirdDogHR does offer a complete talent management software and services solution that can help organizations manage the entire employee life cycle. So with recruiting, onboarding, performance management, learning management, and succession planning, all of those different functional areas can help drive the different life cycle touch points. So it is really critical to get these processes right and think about the bigger picture. So next slide, Chris, we have a screenshot of our software, also demonstrating that it's mobile friendly, and some of the things that our customers say about our software is that it's really easy to use and quick to implement. So now it's my pleasure to introduce today's webinar presenters. Chris Lennon is a talent management strategist and vice president of product management at BirdDogHR. He's responsible for ensuring that the BirdDogHR talent management system meets the needs and exceeds the expectations of our customers. Chris is an active participant in the talent management community, bringing over 18 years of experience to BirdDogHR, and he's presented at numerous industry events and has been quoted as an industry expert in leading publications like Talent Management Magazine, CLO Magazine, New Talent Times, TLNT, and HR Bartender. Joining Chris today is Abby Adamson. Abby has held roles with software product development in such areas as human resources, financial services, and commercial construction, with 3 years of experience focusing on construction project management. At BirdDogHR, Abby manages the development and enhancements that are made to the pre-hire side of the software. However, when she joined the organization, she focused on the post-hire side. So she's got a really great wealth of experience in not only working with our software, but also working with our customers. She spends much of her time working directly with our customers, our customer advisory board, and she helps them with their both their pre-hire and their post-hire strategy. So with those introductions, I will go ahead and turn it over to Chris.
Perfect. Thank you, Ann. And welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. We're really excited to talk to you about the trends that we at BirdDogHR think are going to be exciting for 2018 that have an impact on the way that you run your HR business. Before I dig in, I want to let you know that there is a white paper on our website. If you go to birddoghr.com, go to resources, white papers, and you'll find the 6 need to know talent management trends for 2018, along with any other white papers that we have out there. So I highly recommend you take a look at that white paper. The topics that Abby and I will be covering today focus certainly on the white paper, but it'll be good supplemental material for you to go back and reference later. So with that, I'll go ahead and dig in. It's believed that the first HR department was started at the National Cash Register Company way back in 1901. And it wasn't even called HR back then. The term human resources had only been around for about 15 to 20 years. That first department, that was referred to as the personnel department. And its entire role was designed to handle grievances, discharges, safety, and training supervisors for new laws that might come up, new practices. And if that doesn't sound familiar, it should. That sounds very similar to what most of us have been calling HR for the last 117 years. That is the primary role of HR, and it hasn't really changed. However, I would argue that the role of HR has become more strategic over the years. Many companies now have a chief human resource officer that proves that argument. And in these fast economic times, the impact that HR has on the business is more visible now than ever. With the fast-moving economics comes fast-moving business. And while the core of HR may be similar to what it was over 100 years ago, it's more important to adapt to what I call the business of HR, to be more nimble, to be more flexible, and to make a bigger impact to help the companies that you work for. So today we're going to focus on the trends that we perceive to have the most promise to improve the way that you do business. The topics for today: we will be talking about distributing jobs effectively, and then we'll jump into some mobile talent management. Abby will kick it off with creating some awesome onboarding, prioritizing retention over recruitment, managing the modern workforce, and then getting ready for Generation Z. So those are the topics and the top trends that we see for 2018. We'll drill into each one in more detail, starting it out with Abby, distributing jobs effectively.
All right, thanks, Chris. So like Chris just said, we are going to kick things off today talking about how you can distribute your jobs effectively. And let's get started. 54% of adults conduct their job search solely online, and that number is expected to rise as younger generations continue to enter the workforce. So it's no surprise to any of you that posting your job ads on more than one site will help you gain more visibility. But it's important to note that more candidates are really taking their time while job hunting and are searching multiple sites before they ever even apply to a job. In fact, Glassdoor users reported they use over 7 different job sites during their job search. So to maximize the effectiveness of your job distribution, utilize multiple tools to maximize the effectiveness. The days of just copying and pasting your job ads are over. To save your hiring team time and money, and for maximum visibility, opt for job board aggregation to distribute jobs to multiple sites with just a single click. This isn't anything new, and many of you, if not all of you on the phone today, may use job board aggregation at your company. In a recent poll, 77% job board aggregators will help you get your jobs out there. It's important to ensure you have high-quality job ads that work for you instead of against you. Job ads that use gender-neutral language tend to have a higher response rate because they don't encourage applicants of one gender over another. In particular, you want to make sure to do this for jobs that tend to be dominated by a certain gender. Use clear job as possible to ensure applicants are able to complete and that they want to complete it. So we're going to pause here briefly with a poll question. And as you can see on the screen here.
I'm sorry to interrupt everybody. We're going to switch over to audio. Sorry, we're going to switch it over to a different phone and see if that helps. So we switched to phone. Can somebody type in the questions to make sure that we have the audio? And you can hear me okay? Perfect. Okay. Thank you all so much, and I apologize for the inconvenience and the disruption. Ann mentioned this morning that GoToMeeting did have some audio issues, so it might be GoToMeeting, but we went ahead and switched over to the phones. I'm going to hand it to Abby, and she'll pick up where she left off. So again, apologize and hang on.
Okay, so back to the poll. As you all can see on the screen here, we're wondering how long your typical application is. So your options are too long, we really need to cut it down. Too long, but it needs to be, we really can't cut it down anymore. Too short, or just right. So if you wouldn't mind answering now. Ann, how are we doing?
We're doing really well. I think we have a majority of the folks have voted, so I'm going to go ahead and close the poll and share that information.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, we're opening the results here. I apologize for the pause.
Hey, we're just glad that your phone is working.
They're very, very small, so we're hoping to. Ann, would you mind reading them off for everybody?
Sure, no problem. So the results of the poll were that the majority actually chose the second option. How long is your application? They said it's too long. It needs to be cut down, but we can't cut it down.
Okay.
And then there was actually the biggest category was they thought that their application was just right at 71%. And then we had 7% saying that it's too long, we need to cut it down. And the good news is that 0% voted that it's too short. They're not getting enough information. So at least people are asking for a lot of information, maybe want to pare that down, but are feeling pretty solid about their the questions that they're asking on their application.
Wonderful. All right, well, thank you everybody for answering our poll question here. And now I'm going to get back to our presentation. All right, so short and easy to complete applications are critical to ensure thoroughness from your candidates. 90% of job hunters say that long applications worsen the chance they actually complete it. And 60% admit to actually quitting the application altogether due to the length or the complexity of the application process. And so personally, I have experienced long and cumbersome applications for jobs in the past, and it never leaves me with a good first impression of the employer. So that really is the first time your company leaves an impression on a possible new employee. No matter the industry or the job, there is no need for the application to be so difficult or so long to complete that your candidates actually quit or give up halfway through. Get to the point, ask the questions that are important to finding out which candidates meet your job requirements. And then you can try using things like phone screens and interviews, whether they're virtual or in person, to get some of those finer details. Job searches and applications are just two of the pieces of the puzzle. In today's world, people expect just about everything to be mobile. So let's kick it back over to Chris to learn more about some mobile trends and how you can take advantage.
Okay, thanks, Abby. So it's going to be fun. We're playing past the phone back and forth, but it'll be fine. It'll be great. So it kills me to talk about mobile being a trend for 2018 because it feels like mobile's been around forever. However, it's true. A lot of companies are still trying to figure out how to navigate the mobile landscape. Many companies have archaic technology that won't run on mobile devices. Others have company policies that prevent them from being as mobile as they need to be. But let's go ahead and start with the bare essentials. So mobile optimized job ads. If you do nothing else mobile related, I highly encourage you to focus on your job ads, making sure that they are capable and ready for mobile distribution, because 53% of 18 to 29-year-olds used smartphones as part of their job search. We also know that 27%, almost 27% of career site traffic comes from mobile devices. That's almost 1/3 of your career site traffic is coming from a mobile device. You need to make sure it's mobile friendly. A lot of customers or a lot of users, a smartphone is actually their only access to a computer. I hear time and time again, a lot of people don't have home computers anymore, especially as you get into younger generation. They might have moved out of the home that might have had an older computer, and the only thing they have is their cell phone that keeps them connected to the internet. This next one is interesting to me. It says that 9% of applications are completed on a mobile device. That kind of goes against the concept of what we're talking about having mobile optimized job ads. However, I don't think that says the whole story. I think that statistic is misleading. It says that only 9% apply with a mobile device, but that's not what we're seeing here at BirdDogHR. And we also know that a lot of users do a lot of their research on the mobile device. They might end up going to their laptop to actually apply, and a lot of times that's because that's where their resume lives. However, the mobile application process does become more critical. And like I said, here at BirdDogHR, we do see a higher percentage through mobile devices, and maybe that's because our applications are mobile friendly, and maybe some other ones aren't. But the big one that I think is driving mobile is Indeed. I don't know if you guys have ever heard about Indeed. It's this tiny little company out there. No, I'm kidding. Indeed is obviously huge, and most of you, if not all of you, know about Indeed. We see a large number of applications coming from Indeed. When we released the Apply with Indeed component to our software, the number of applications literally jumped by 50% overnight. So not quite doubled, but 50% overnight. And I'm not kidding on that statistic. We very closely monitored the number of applications that were coming through our software. So job ads, critically important. What else is important when it comes to mobile? Well, it's important because we know that mobile will help you drive efficiency within HR. 91% of your employees are using mobile apps. They clearly are more comfortable with mobile, and they would like you to offer tools that are also mobile enabled. I mentioned earlier about HR being more strategic. Moving to mobile can actually help you get there. Offering more capabilities where employees want it allows you to give them the tools to be self-sufficient. And if they're self-sufficient, that means that you can focus on driving revenue. One idea is to use for a mobile tool is to use a tool for real-time recognition, whether it's written recognition or through swag. Another idea for mobile is pulse surveys. I'm not sure if you've heard what a pulse survey is, but essentially a pulse survey is kind of like it sounds. Imagine the employee survey of old, where you do an annual survey to all your employees to see how they like their jobs and see how they like working for the company. Back when employee surveys were invented, probably about 50 years ago, that might have been sufficient time frame to collect statistics from your employees. It's no longer feasible to expect that data that could potentially be a year old is going to help you drive your business. A pulse survey sends surveys to your employees on a much more frequent basis. And depending on the tools that you use, some of them obviously can be automated. Some of them do a subsegment of your employees, so you're not bombarding every single employee all the time with these, but rather you're doing targeted audiences. What it allows you to do is pull powerful information that's real time in short burst surveys. It allows you to see the shifts in the company culture and allows you to see growing concerns before those concerns become big, huge problems within the company. Pulse surveys are also a lot easier to conduct on mobile devices. So if it's something that you're interested in, BirdDogHR does not provide software on this yet, but I highly encourage you to go out there and try to find a vendor that sends a notice to the employees, potentially on an email, that they can launch directly from their cell phone. Another great benefit of mobile and a great asset to HR is payroll and benefits. So if your payroll and benefits provider allows mobile capability, that's wonderful. One of the big ones is having access to your ID cards. I'm not sure if any of you have done this yet, but I know that it was incredibly beneficial for me when my daughter took my ID card to college with her and left me to fend for myself, where I had to make a stop into urgent care. So having that access to that card on my phone made it really convenient. Having those IDs on your phone is also more secure than carrying them around in your wallet. Your wallet can easily get stolen. Your phone can too, but when they steal your phone, they have to know your password to be able to get access to the data. Otherwise, they just wipe it and everything's gone and secure. Open enrollment. Open enrollment becomes a lot easier if you have it allowed on a mobile device. Your employees can access it and enroll, see all the options available to them, and it makes your life in HR a lot easier as well. And all of this is a lot more cost effective. It's ideally cost effective for the insurance company, which then in turn, they hopefully pass that savings on to you, and you can have a discount when you provide mobile services oftentimes. All right, the last slide that I have in regards to mobile is BYOD. BYOD stands for Bring Your Own Device. In a recent CIO studies, it shows that workers are more productive when they can bring their own devices to work. It's a comfort thing. It's they know how to use the tool thing. It's multiple items. But I know that HR, I know that you on the phone, you don't necessarily make the policies around whether or not your employees can use their personal computers or mobile device. But if you're in the strategic role that we talked about earlier, you are certainly an influencer. I would encourage you to push to allow personal devices within your company, if for no other reason than for email communication. It makes my life so much easier, and Abby's going to frown when I email her or text her on nights or weekends asking for, hey, what about this, what about this? We oftentimes do software pushes at night. So being able to have that communication with the whole entire team allows us to be a lot more productive when we can do those on our own personal mobile devices. All right, with that, I pass it back over to Abby.
All right, let's dig into some awesome onboarding ideas. In order to better retain your new employees, it's crucial to start engaging them before they even set foot in your door. Streamline your onboarding process by finding ways to make their first day less overwhelming and more about getting them excited about joining your company. New employees who attend a well-structured onboarding program were 69% more likely to remain at a company up to 3 years. And additionally, according to the Brandon Hall Group, companies who have implemented a formal onboarding program see a 54% increase in new hire productivity, new hire engagement, and overall job satisfaction from their employee base. This also helps with employee retention, and since as much as 20% of employee turnover happens within the first 45 days of employment, first impressions are very important. So if your company's onboarding process seems to be lacking, work on creating company-wide policies that support a streamlined onboarding program. Make sure your HR professionals and your hiring managers are all aware of them. A standard onboarding experience will help your company see an increase in new hire retention, productivity, and engagement, but everyone needs to be on the same page for it to truly be a success. Give your new hire the opportunity to complete their onboarding paperwork using software to automate the process, like BirdDogHR's onboarding application. Completing their paperwork before day one allows your new employees to focus more on immersing themselves into their new role rather than focusing solely on HR paperwork. According to a recent poll, best-in-class companies are 35% more likely to start onboarding employees before their first day. However, 22% of companies have no formal onboarding policies or programs. So there's certainly room for improvement. Onboarding software can take much of the burden off your staff, all while simplifying and standardizing your onboarding process. All new hire information is going to be collected and stored in one place, and those responsible for various parts of the process can be easily held accountable. As an administrator, you can quickly see who needs to take action on an outstanding item and then follow up with them as needed. One of the biggest benefits of using onboarding software is government and other forms for compliance. Your software solution should keep all those different forms up to date and ensure they are accurately completed as best as possible by your new hires and managers. Once the paperwork is completed, all documents are stored and can be easily recalled and as needed. Without a formal program, it can take 6 months to 1 year before your new hires become effective. Digital onboarding during the first few days allows your new employees to become much more productive even in their first weeks. But it's important to make employee onboarding a continual process by providing opportunities for professional development and career enhancement. Set several small goals with your new hires to boost productivity on their first day and recognize them in front of their peers for their unique contribution. Employees who feel they have the opportunity to learn and grow in their role are more engaged and productive, making them less likely to leave the company after a short tenure. We're going to talk more about employee engagement later on, with examples of how disengaged employees can hurt your company and how to transform them. So like I previously said, onboarding should be a continual process to be the most effective. Really take the time to invest in training for your employees, not only in their first few weeks or months, but throughout their tenure at your company. Make sure your employees know what is expected of them with frequent check-ins. These meetings should also give the employees feedback on their job performance throughout the year, rather than only at review time. And finally, promote an open communication environment and relationship with your employees so that they feel comfortable receiving your feedback, and they also feel confident providing you their feedback and ideas as well. And with that, I'm going to pass it back over to Chris, who's going to talk more about prioritizing employee retention over just recruitment.
Excellent. Thanks, Abby. Okay, so with that, we're going to talk a little bit about employee retention and prioritizing that over recruitment. But before I dig into that, I want to let you know that retention over recruitment, it's a topic that's very near and dear to my heart. I worked for Gateway Computers for about 20 years. This picture is of the headquarters around 2007. It's about 6 blocks long. Matter of fact, it's a huge cow-spotted building. My wife didn't believe me that I worked in a giant cow-spotted building until I drove her out there. She thought I was joking with her. But it is, in fact, a huge building. And while in the 8 years I worked there, I sat there, I sat there, I sat there, I sat over here, I sat over there, and then I sat over there, which at that last one was pointing to my house when they kicked me out and I had to work out of my home. But it was between the first desk and the second desk when I launched my career in HR. So this desk and this guy. During that time, I was working as a customer service rep, and I was fielding phone, and this is on my my LinkedIn profile, by the way, and it goes back like 20 years, but I was taking phone calls from unhappy customers. And a bunch of us, just like any other organization, a bunch of us went on break, and we were complaining about how many people were quitting, because obviously it made our lives harder when we lost all of our teammates all the time. And we came down to, they were quitting because they didn't feel proficient in their jobs. It was hard, and due to the lack of training, essentially. So I went home, and being the ambitious little snot that I was, I came up with a proposal. Keep in mind, I'd only been working there for about 4 months. I came in and talked to my manager in a one-on-one, and I asserted that we could curb the attrition that was happening within this organization and save the company oodles of money if we had better training. So apparently she was so impressed with me that she pulled some strings and helped me land an open position in the training department. And I say that facetiously because I keep telling myself that, but I'm sure it had more to do with the fact that my phone stats were terrible and I was bringing the team down, and she was excited to get me out of the team because I was making them look bad. But that was the beginning of my entire career in HR, and it was all focused around retention, like I said. Retention absolutely impacts the bottom line. Replacing an employee, we know, costs between 16 to 20% of that new hire's salary. And in some cases, I've seen statistics when you're hiring for an executive, that can get into 100% of their annual salary. We also know that about 30% of your budget is spent on recruiting. It might fluctuate from company to company, but that's the average across the entire industry. A 10% increase in engagement can increase profits within the organization by $2,400 per employee. And that's a statistic that was taken from a study that I believe was from SHRM. So the recruitment, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So let's talk about that for a second. What are the costs around recruitment? We know that they're expensive. Why are they expensive? There's obviously the job posting costs just to source and put out the job openings. Potentially you are looking at recruiters, depending on the industry, depending on the position. It can get very expensive just to post and recruit for those jobs. And then talk about recruiting from competition. So you are not only trying to pull some people from your competitors, but they are also trying to pull people, all the industries are trying to pull that competition from you as well. So you're competing for the same small group of candidates in the workforce. Excuse me. Another way that is expensive, and one that is not oftentimes looked at, but it's the lack of skilled talent that's entering the workforce. So when you let somebody go that has 10 years of experience, or rather somebody with 10 years of experience leaves your company, trying to replace that with somebody who has very little experience that's entering the workforce is expensive. The amount of time it takes to get that person up to speed absolutely costs money to the company. And then there's the warm body syndrome. I have to admit, I have also been culpable of this particular behavior, where in the past I thought it would be better just to get a body when I have an opening, get that person filled so that I don't lose that slot in case sometime down the road that slot goes away if I don't have it filled yet. So anybody is better than nobody was the perception at the time. Quickly learned, and hopefully you have as well, that that's probably not the best practice. That is very expensive, because not only are you obviously paying the salary for somebody that might not be perfectly adequate, but then when it comes time to replace them, you're obviously spending all that money again. And last, the lack of planning and the panic hire. So this has repercussions throughout the entire company. When you have somebody that's like, oh my gosh, I need to fill somebody right now. We didn't plan ahead, and now we're short-staffed, and everybody on the team bears the burden when you're short-staffed. The quality of whatever it is you're working on gets lowered and reduced. So the cost of not planning becomes very expensive. And all of this has to do with the cost of not retaining your employees. So with that, Anne, it's time for another poll. This poll, the question is, does your company have any initiative that focuses on employee engagement in 2018? Do you have any initiatives that focus on employee engagement in 2018? So the poll is open. Go ahead. It's really easy. There's 3 options: yes, no, and not sure. Please select one of those options. We'll give you another couple of seconds. While we're waiting, and how's the audio going? Have we heard any more comments since the disruption earlier in the webinar?
No, we haven't at all. So I think everything's going very well. Thanks.
Awesome. Glad to hear.
And I think we have a good majority of the audience has voted. So I'll go ahead and close the poll and share the results. Chris, will you be able to see them, or would you like me to read them?
Nope, I can see them. I can see them just fine.
Awesome.
We figured out the technology.
Awesome.
Okay, so poll results. We have 60% of our audience said yes, they have initiatives in 2018 to increase or focus on employee engagement. 16% said no, and 24% said they weren't sure. Those statistics are great. That is not surprising to me at all. And if you want to give me back control, I'll tell you why that's not surprising to me. Perfect. Thank you. That statistic is not surprising to me, or the results of the poll here is not surprising to me, because there is a study performed by Virgin Pulse. Virgin Pulse is an employee engagement company. That's what they focus on. They do a lot of consulting around this area. They said that 88% of businesses out there plan to improve employee engagement. So that corresponds to the survey results we just heard. 60-ish% of you said that you do have plans, and then there's 24% that said that you didn't know. So if you add those two together, you're going to get 88. Now I know that 24% doesn't equal yes, but it's close. So we know that 88% of businesses plan to improve employee engagement. We can't talk about retention without talking about engagement. So clearly, engagement is seen as a critical issue. But why? What's the real business driver behind engaging your employees? It's important to companies, and the reason that 88% of the companies are looking at it is because it's become a pandemic. The number of actively disengaged employees in 2007 was 13%. So just over 10 years ago, 13% of your employees were actively disengaged. What that means is they weren't just like, yeah, okay, whatever. They were actively out looking for jobs. They were actively disgruntled. They were potentially spreading their disgruntledness amongst their peers, and that has an impact to the company. That was 13% in 2007. In 2017, that number spiked to 26%. 10 years later, that number has doubled. So it is a very big growing concern. Why are so many employees actively disengaged? Well, let's talk about why employees quit. You know that your employees are disengaged. You know that they're out there looking for jobs. Why? It's all about the dollars, right? It's all about the money. No, it's not. You should know that. You're in HR. It is not about the money. Compensation is not the top reason people quit their jobs. There are other factors that matter much more, including work-life balance, advancement issues. Employees pay attention to factors like mutual trust, recognition, and office relationships. They use these factors to plan out their future. If you want that future to include working with your organization, then you need to do a good job of understanding the workplace deal breakers like these and how to avoid them. We know that the cost of losing an employee is high. When you engage your employees, you reduce turnover significantly. 25% of companies, sorry, let me say that again. For companies that traditionally have high turnover, you can reduce that turnover by 25% if you can increase your employee engagement. For companies that traditionally have low turnover rates, think of office companies, office workers, technology, those types of organizations, you can impact retention by 65% if you increase your employee engagement. That's staggering. The impact that you can make on your employees' retention just by engaging them more is big. So for those 66% of you that have plans in 2018, that's great. That's awesome. Because what you'll see when you have engaged employees is that companies that have engaged employees see at least a 20% boost to productivity and profitability. When your employees love working for you, they tend to work harder for you. So let's talk a little bit about engagement and how it applies to potentially onboarding. So we talked a little bit about onboarding earlier when Abby gave her portion. These rules that I'll talk about, they're important for onboarding as you're going through the process of engaging your employees. You want to start early, but these are also good rules for every single day. You want to immerse your employees in the culture of the organization. You want your employees to learn the company values. And again, these are critical for new hires, but again, not always just new hires, but ongoing. It's good to pay attention and foster. Understanding expectations, setting goals, and providing training. All of these are critical to acclimate and engage the employee early. Abby's going to talk a little bit more about engagement as it relates to the modern workforce here in a second, but before I hand it over to her, I'm going to leave you with a couple of thoughts. I've been asked before, how do we know if our employees are engaged? I mentioned the Pulse survey earlier, but you can look at these key indicators outside of any sort of survey to see if your employees are engaged. Ideally, you're capturing this information from a survey, but you can do it through other mechanisms as well. For example, enthusiasm. Are your employees enthusiastic about their work? Do they want to come to work? Can you see that? Can you feel that when you talk to them? Are they motivated by their leaders? Do they feel inspired by the people that are running your company? Are your employees empowered? Are they allowed to do work their way? Do you let them make decisions that allow them to be as productive and impactful as possible? And are they confident? Are you sure that they feel like they can achieve excellence within the organization? So with that, I'm going to hand it back to Abby. She's going to talk about managing the modern workforce.
All right. So what makes a modern workforce? We all know technology is consistently changing, and so are trends in recruiting and talent management. So in order to keep up, it's important to understand what makes a workforce modern and how your organization can evolve and keep up with that. The modern workforce is unique from any other time in history and has different needs for employee engagement, recognition, development, and communication. Take an individual approach when managing your employees and show them they are valued as individuals as well as being a member of the workforce. Each employee has their own set of strengths and weaknesses, so recognize both and tailor opportunities for professional development accordingly. Assign tasks that highlight their abilities, but also help them grow and develop new skills. Chris spoke about employee engagement in previous slides, and this is a great example of a way your managers can increase the engagement of their direct reports. So how can your company better manage a modern workforce? Rather than overanalyzing, many HR professionals are now looking for areas that can benefit from short-term fixes. Watch out for teams that have blockers, preventing them from being able to deliver on time and on budget. If you find the blockers, remove them, or find the right person who can remove those blockers for the team, helping them move forward in the right direction. Another example is to move your high-performing employees into leadership roles so they can help move your other employees towards more modern, efficient, and effective techniques and ideas. What might seem like short-term fixes can have true long-term payoffs and can result in higher levels of employee engagement. loyalty to your organization, and of course, employee productivity. Traditionally, benefits have always been a key factor in not only what leads to a candidate accepting a job offer, but also what promotes job satisfaction. In fact, in a survey conducted by Refresh Leadership, 71% of employees said benefits offered by their employer are extremely important to their job satisfaction. Today, we are seeing a trend of employees who are more attracted to learning and development opportunities. This is especially true with the millennial generation, who has earned the stereotype of job hoppers. Quality training and opportunities for learning and development positively after their workforce engagement, making them more likely to stay with a job longer than 1 to 2 years. It's definitely not just millennials who want development opportunities. According to a 2017 SHRM article, companies with employee development initiatives across the organization see a rate of engagement 67% higher and a 30% lower turnover rate in companies without them. Managers and team members should frequently seek each other out to talk about opportunities for development and goal setting. Conversations shouldn't focus on past performance, but how the future can become brighter for employee and company alike. So let's get ready for Generation Z. Millennials have been the focus of workplace trends for the last couple of decades, but a new generation has begun entering the workforce, and that's Generation Z. For those of you not familiar with this generation and who makes it up, Gen Z includes anyone born between 1996 and 2012, meaning they began entering the workforce officially back in 2016, so just a couple years now. They present a unique set of benefits and challenges to employers who are trying to connect with them. By understanding what makes Generation Z unique and the environments in which they thrive, you can make your business attractive to a unique, diverse generation that will bring hard work and refreshing perspective to your workforce. So who are we dealing with here? What makes them so unique? No surprise here, technology use. A whopping 92% admit to being online on a daily basis. And to be honest, I was actually surprised that this wasn't higher based on my own kids. They seem to be online 100% of the time. They have an approximate 8-second attention span, so it's extremely important to use simple messages that get to the point quickly. Recognize that they are looking for more frequent communication and are used to assessing large amounts of information in a very short period of time. On average, they spend 2 to 4 hours consuming some kind of video content a day, whether that's for personal use or education. They spend 10+ hours a day using some form of technology. So seeing these numbers might not be exactly shocking to you, but it clearly shows that this is a new generation and has a different set of needs to successfully recruit and retain them. Companies should consider refining their communication strategy to play to the generational differences to retain their best employees. Texting seems to be all the rage right now when it comes to recruiting and talent management. But while they might be the most connected generation to date, a recent survey of Gen Z shows us that texting might not be the preferred communication strategy for this generation. According to SHRM, 74% of Gen Z prefers to communicate face-to-face with their colleagues. They will be less responsive to email and are more likely to attend networking events to feel a connection with individuals they interact with in person. 58% of Gen Zers are concerned about the future, so offering them job security and professional development opportunities will help to address those concerns, but will also ensure company loyalty. This generation of employees is known for loyalty rather than being job hoppers like their millennial counterparts. Addressing concerns face-to-face shows you care about their concerns and value their loyalty. What may be surprising is that Generation Z isn't as excited about college as its millennial siblings and Gen X parents. 40% of Gen Z would consider joining the workforce right out of high school. Many say because they want to avoid excessive student loan debt. While the majority of this generation is still in high school or even in middle school, 10% of Gen Z is currently in some stage of vocational education, and 3% have already joined the workforce. It's believed this young generation has more access to vocational education than earlier generations, but it's also thought this generation is more adverse to college debt because they have grown up during the recent financial crisis. Since Generation Z makes up 25% of the population, outnumbering both millennials and baby boomers, they could be part of the solution to the current talent shortage in the trades industry. So now is the time for companies to secure their spot at high school and trade school career fairs. Generation Z has never lived without technology. As an example, the iPhone was first released when the oldest members of this generation were just 11 years old. But it's their affinity for tech that will help boost productivity and innovation, helping to maintain a strong and modern workforce. This generation is not afraid to adopt new technology quickly, but they are also more about learning how to use it properly the first time, as opposed to doing a trial and error basis. These individuals are going to be invaluable when starting new technology initiatives or evaluating and improving new products and services. All right, and one last time, I'm going to hand it over to Chris.
Okay, thank you so much. And this is the slide where we start ending the presentation. So get ready with your questions. We will soon open it up for questions. But before we do, I want to leave you with this image that I showed at the beginning of the presentation. HR, you've been around since 1901. Yeah, I know that you personally have not been around since 1901, or at least I don't think you have. But the organization or the practice, the business of HR has been around since 1901. But what era are you in with your processes and with your involvement in the company's strategy? Are you more 1901 or are you 2018? So I hope you enjoyed today's session, and I hope that Abby and I were able to offer some thought-provoking ideas and some insights to help you as you broach into 2018. And with that, Anne, we'll wrap it up and open it up for some questions.
All right, sounds good. So thanks for a great presentation, Chris and Abby. I think there were a lot of really consumable tips for the audience. So hopefully everyone has added a couple notes for their focus list for 2018. As Chris mentioned, we'll be starting the Q&A segment pretty soon. So I invite you to submit the questions that you have in the Q&A panel. While we're doing that and while you're getting your questions ready, just very quickly, we do have resources available on BirdDogHR.com. It's one way that we really find that we can help the HR community is by sharing expertise and best practices, not only what we've experienced, but what we have heard back from you. So we're constantly creating new resources to help you navigate that changing talent acquisition and talent management landscape. So we invite you to check out our whole library that's on our website. So the first question that we have received is about job board integration. The question is, you mentioned that BirdDogHR has built-in job board aggregation. How does that work?
Okay, great question. Yes, BirdDogHR does offer built-in job board aggregation. What that means is I know that a lot of ATSs out there offer minimal job board posting capabilities, and then you have to go through a third-party job board aggregation service, which means you have an additional contract, you have additional effort, and sometimes the integration's a little kludgy. BirdDogHR, we have, as you're going through the application, as you're posting a job, we have directly built into the software the ability to select from industry leading number of job boards available. We're continually adding additional job boards to that list. Yeah, so as you're going through the application process, you can select those job boards, and some of them are free, many of them are free, and some of them are paid for job postings, and you can choose which ones you want to post to for that job and click go, and it's done, that easy.
Very good. Next one is, do you have any ideas on how to improve company culture?
Ooh, ideas on how to improve company culture. That's that's a big question, and that's a hard question to answer. And the real answer is I can't tell you the answer to that because it completely depends on your company. I think it was mentioned earlier in the presentation. If not, it was in my head, that the company culture, oh, I know what it was. I posted a posting on an article on LinkedIn this morning. Company culture is very specific to the company. Not everybody can be Google, nor should everybody try to be Google. If you try to be Google and it doesn't fit your organization, doesn't fit your culture, you'll fail. Google obviously offers a lot to their employees, but if you're a 50-employee HVAC company that's going out and trying to do work on job sites, you're not going to be able to provide that same type of culture, but you can provide a culture unique to your organization. You can, however, if you feel like your company culture is lacking, you should absolutely take some time, invest energy to try to figure out why and what it is, and more importantly, what do you want it to be, and then think milestones for yourself on how to get there. One of the things that we do here at BirdDogHR that is wonderful is we do ongoing company events where we take the entire company out to a location and do something fun like an arcade or something like that. But each of us managers, we have discretionary income to take our individual teams out, so we can do team building activities as well, and that really helps foster the culture that's important to us here at BirdDogHR. But again, determine what's important to your company. That was a really long answer, Ann.
That was a really long answer, but a good one. And you know, certainly we do have a webinar that we did that was about the difference between employee engagement and company culture, and kind of, you know, how those two things work together. Chris alluded to that, but we have a webinar archived on our website that you're welcome to download to get some further information. Okay, so another question that has been submitted is, does BirdDogHR offer all the government forms we need for onboarding in your software?
All right, I'm going to answer that question for everybody. So the answer is we have the most recent versions of the Form I-9, the federal W-4, and all of these state withholding forms, so those states that have their own specific withholding forms. We do commit to having the most recent versions of those available to our customers. And actually, we're in the midst of starting to get the 2018 versions of the state withholding forms out there, as well as the federal form when that's available. There are going to be some legal or forms for compliance that you may need that are specific to your industry or your company, and those you would need to upload as custom forms to make them available to your new hires, as we cannot maintain, unfortunately, every single legal form for each of your industry.
All right, very good. Another question regarding employee engagement, and the question is, does BirdDogHR actually have employee engagement software?
Does BirdDogHR have employee engagement software? Yes, but kind of. Let me explain what I mean. There's not really employee engagement software out there. I know it's a big fervor that's happening within companies, and I obviously had a big portion of my presentation around employee engagement. But there's not a lot of software out there that focuses on employee engagement. You might find some that does rewards and recognition. That's great. You might find full surveys, which I talked about earlier, but those aren't exactly engagement. What I consider to be engagement is truly involving your employees in the ongoing conversations between managers and employees, for example. Abby talked a lot about employee development. So when you're talking about performance reviews, and here at BirdDogHR, we absolutely support the annual performance review, but that's not what I consider employee engagement. Our software also supports the ongoing touch points between a manager and employee, whether it's quarterly, whether it's monthly, something along those lines. So to really help foster that communication, that open communication, and again, the employee development through, for example, our learning management module.
Awesome, very good. Well, I am showing the top of the hour. I think we had a pretty specific question from a customer come in. So Kim, I have grabbed your question. I'll make sure that Abby sees it, and we'll get right back to you on that. but since we're at the top of the hour, we'll go ahead and close the session. So I would like to thank everyone again in the audience for attending today, for sharing some time with us. Chris and Abby, thanks again for a great presentation, and look for an email from me before the end of the week that will have an archive to this session and some of the resources that you might be interested in. So thanks again, everyone. This concludes the webinar. Have a great day.
Thank you so much, Ann.